Hello. Hello, good morning. Welcome to the haunted landscape of your imagination. I apologise about the slightly slipshod start to the morning. It's not going to continue. We're all in now and things can start happening. Welcome to, this is the third haunted landscape of the London Fortean Society. Anyone here been to others? Cool, so some of you are new. Brilliant, welcome. So this is a sort of a generally annual thing we do to look at the folklore, legends and monsters of the British Isles. Not because they're superior to the folklore and monsters of any other part of the world. They just happen to be our local ones. And local stuff is interesting. Welcome. Hopefully you've seen a timetable, but there will be a PowerPoint after Doc's talk going across the screen during the breaks, letting you know when everyone's playing, or just stop me, hello, I'm Scott, and ask me, and hopefully I'll know and not cry too much because I'm stressed. Anyway, so, really excited about the programme today. As I say, it's the British Isles, so Ireland does sneak in at the end, talks on various aspects of folklore and Forteana. Our first speaker is the mighty Doc Rowe, so the expert of seasonal celebrations, what you might call calendar customs, and parts of sort of the folk heritage practice, you can correct me in a sec, Doc, of the country and the nation. Doc knows it way better than me, and I've not rehearsed this. So do welcome speaking on the rites, R-I-T-E-S, and wrongs, traditional spelling of autumn. Warm welcome, please, to Doc Rowe.
Morning. We've had the usual venture connecting laptops with programs and things like that, but it seems to be, he said, without it happening. Right, do it by hand. Yeah, Scott asked me if I'd introduce the day by looking at seasonal activities at this time of the year. And this time of the year, of course, like many others, embraces so many events. And I'd just like to give you an idea of some of the things that I have had to overlook. You might actually recognize some of these as they flash by. Oh, have we missed? Right.
There you go.
Did you not see a thing? I can see it clearly here, you know, so. Right, are we there?
Yeah.
Ah! Oh, it's like old-style movies. How are we doing?
Yeah, we're good, yeah.
Okay, I spoke too soon. So anyway, I say, give you an idea of some of the things I've had to overlook. This time, hopefully, it'll work. So you may recognize, oh, yes, there's mine, there's theirs. And this is just between August and now. So Scott will be relieved to know that I'm not going to even attempt to run through all those. November the 5th just gone by. There we are, November the 11th. 21st. Oh, there's a relief. Right, I'm going to start in August, the end of August, when the villagers of West Whitton in North Yorkshire follow their annual perambulations. This is the Saturday nearest the 24th of August, St. Bartholomew's Day. And they make this larger-than-life-size straw-stuffed effigy with two torch bulb eyes which flash on and off. And this is carried through the streets, shoulder high, by the two men, while a third man actually shouts. Is there sound? This takes place at 9 o'clock at night. It's a very short ceremony of about 20 minutes. So over the 20 minutes, the Barthel's journey starts at the top of the village and then meanders along a relatively prescribed route But I say relatively prescribed because quite often drinks are proffered from various households, and it can divert the route a little. And obviously the drinks are clearly welcomed by the shouter because his voice rapidly reduces in quality and strength by the end of 15 shouts sometimes. But finally they arrive at Graskill End, and the Bartle has his coat rather unceremoniously ripped open. He's doused in paraffin and is subjected to a very fiery execution. But being Yorkshire, they take the 2 torch light bulbs out for next year. And surprisingly, they leave the boots, because sometimes the boots are very expensive. It's thought that the Bartle represents a scapegoat of the community, and there's also a local legend that says the Bartle was a sheep stealer, so he meets his end. Or even a local giant, which is a more recent addition. I suspect the folklorist has been there. And the giant was hunted down and killed by the outraged visitors. And the shouted rhyme, if you didn't catch it, it recalls actual local places where this Bartle, this sheep stealer or giant, was set upon. It goes, at Penhill Crags he tore his rags, at Hunter's Thorn he blew his horn, at Chapelbank Stee he had the misfortune to brack his knee, at Graskill Back he broke his neck, at Wadham's End he couldn't fend, at Graskill End he macked his mend. Shout, lads, shout! Hooray! Well done, you've been listening. But this short nocturnal event is one of the many hundreds which we've just looked at taking place through autumn. And I've tried to compress this as much as possible. So forgive me if I rush through and try not to overrun. But when the warmth of the summer begins to disappear, the harsher weather takes place. And I think these seasonal events, like the Burning Bartle, seem to work in a kind of antithesis to the looming period of darkness. And there's a natural tendency to withdraw both physically and emotionally. Sometimes it's a selected group of people, like a micro-community, or in some cases the whole community. But these seasonal events possibly may go back centuries, but many are of comparative infancy. But whichever or whatever, they do represent a touchstone for the participants. And I think I always see it as a kind of recharging of a communal pacemaker that delivers a collective heartbeat. That's posh. So for that reason, I'm quite reluctant to call these activities by the usual term folk or calendar custom, because I see that phrase as a vestige of earlier academic folklore studies. And these present an ossified vision of England that's always in the past, and it's always celebrating that past. Whereas I think the relationship to the past is quite equivocal. So many of these events date from fairly recent times, and so that academic theorizing about quasi-Neolithic fertility rites, is quite oblique and irrelevant. Because I think the past is not at all the point. These are living, organic traditions with a continuous present. It's a focus for celebrating now, so I prefer to talk about them as seasonal events. And many of these newer events are urban. And as we know, in the best part of the 20th century, folklorists and collectors tended to focus their studies exclusively on the rural. So urban behavior, or even misbehavior, did not interest the early collectors. And that focus did much to spread the notion that the English countryside was a timeless, united place with a common character, where the remains of pre-Christian rites were acted out by unquestioning yokels, a kind of satisfied peasantry, were bound by unspoken tradition, rather than, as it is, an ever-changing landscape where traditions grow and change with the people. But this is 21st century England, and it's autumn. Autumn heralded at one time by the ripening of the harvest and culminating with a huge fiery bang around the 5th of November. So that's the kind of way we're going. Late August, we have the wild, colourful spectacle of Notting Hill Carnival, a recent addition to our seasonal festivities from 1966. It's a kind of Caribbean import. And people have always been attracted by the foreign, and the more exotic and romantic, obviously, the better. And of course, Carnival enables us to participate rather than merely spectate. So it's rather like the last night of the proms, which I didn't have in the list. But the English, of course, have a reputation of being too reserved. This is a wonderful thing from the Daily Mirror in 1936. Can you see it? We're too reserved to celebrate or party as our foreign neighbours do. And I suspect that everyone in this room would agree with me. We're far from that. So these are the clips from the Daily Mirror in 1936. If only. Right, I'm going to start with the horn dancers of Abbots Bromley. So I've now leapt through to September. An easy date is the Wakes Monday in Abbots Bromley. It's the first Monday following the first Sunday after the 4th. Are you with me? People get it so wrong. I hope I got that right. But Abbots Bromley horn dancers, it begins before 8 o'clock when the horn dancers go to the church and collect the horns. These are ancient reindeer horns from St. Nicholas Church. And they then spend about 13 and a half hours visiting farms, local houses, and pubs as well. It takes over a route of about 20 miles. That's dancing and performing. They're accompanied by Maid Marian, of course, she's a man in Tudor women's clothes. There are 2 musicians, a boy with a triangle and a man with a melodeon. The music is actually a surprise sometimes to visitors. Can you hear that okay? It needs to go up. It draws more from more popular tunes alongside the traditional ones. So you have the Isle of Capri sitting quite comfortably alongside Nellie the Elephant, and even Does Your Chewing Gum Lose Its Flavour on the Bedpost Overnight. I mean, it's a relatively simple dance. So usually a single file procession, and then the dancers moving, weave in and out of themselves rather in a snake-like fashion. And then lead into a ring, which suddenly turns on itself and goes in the opposite direction. I hope you're taking notes. This shot was actually at 6 o'clock at night, so they've been going from 8 o'clock in the morning. After a few of these twists and turns, the dancers move into 2 lines facing each other, and the white horn faces the brown. And they step forward to meet each other, rather like rutting stags. And they do that several times, and then the occasional shout from the leader just means the dancers meet, cross over, and change sides. So they've got a hobby horse there, a Maid Marian figure, a boy on the triangle, 2 musicians in this case. And this is at 9 o'clock at night, so they're still doing quite well. Probably the beer. We know the tradition is some antiquity. There's an early reference to a hobby horse dance in the region, but there's no mention of the horns until 1686, which is quite early. I suspect it probably would have fallen victim to Puritan prohibition in the 1640s, but we have no record of that, sadly. And it wasn't until 1880 that the horn dancers appeared in the Elizabethan costumes they wear today, and I suspect why that happened. But these were made by the local vicar, the local vicar's wife and her daughters, and they're based on Shakespearean images that were found in a local window, the Betley window. The local story is that they were made from the vicarage curtains, i.e. the curtains that went round the bed, the 4-poster. Oh, and also in the late 1970s, a small piece of a single reindeer horn was actually carbon dated, and it gave us a date of 1066, plus or minus 80 years. But, of course, that doesn't mean the dance itself is that old, or, indeed, the 5 remaining antlers are the same date. But I mentioned earlier, I mean, here we find this desperation to link it further back as an archetypal relic of a pagan custom or a pre-Christian activity. And you get neo-pagans, dare I call them, turning up in droves with their cow horn drinking vessels in elegant cloaks and floral garlands. And many have mistakenly arrived at dawn with a desire to link it to late midsummer ritual. They're not actually put off when I tell them that the horns are actually kept in the Christian church throughout the year. That doesn't dispirit their religious fervour. And reference to the fact that horns were originally paraded at Christmas to collect for the poor of the parish does not dispel their ancient midsummer idea. But it does become obvious during the day that the local hostelries quickly become the pagans' preferred sacred groves. Bless them. So, indeed, the colour of the horn dancers' costume once were autumnal. They've changed. It's been about 7 changes of costume over the years. So the colours of the fields, the earth and corn, the reminder of the season and time for harvesting. I've just thrown this because at one point the agricultural work began and ended with merrymaking and games. Any excuse for a party, really. And the gathering of the corn harvest was perhaps the most important time of the year. And even me, I remember in Devon in my youth, the crying of the neck ceremony, where they would cut down all the corn, the harvest, leaving one clump. And then they would descend upon that in different ways, sometimes cutting it down, sometimes throwing their hooks at it. And the cry would be, "We have 'em! We have 'em! We have 'em!" And the group would shout, "What have he? What have he? What have he?" Down in Devon, you see. And the reaper would reply, "Our neck, our neck, a neck." And then they would chop it down, go off to the pub and have a celebration. But I say a lot of these died with mechanization. So whereas one time you needed, 3 or a dozen people to cut things down, you now need 1 or 2 and a machine. In fact, the very ancient harvest Thanksgiving service was only created in 1843 by Reverend Hawker in Morwenstow in North Cornwall. And within about 10 years, it spread throughout the country. And so those celebrations had antiquity thrust upon it and became the norm. So the harvest home celebrations became supplanted with church harvest festivals. In London, as you may have noticed, we have the Pearly Kings and Queens, the first Sunday in October, at various venues now celebrating their harvest festival. Oh, and I would add that some of you might know the singer and playwright Ewan MacColl. There is a plaque that Camden Council put up in his memory in Russell Square. And every year, twice a year, on October the 22nd and January the 25th, which is his birthday, a group of friends, colleagues, and fans meet at this tree. And around 12 o'clock, and we put red flowers, of course, in the tree and celebrate. We drink a lot and sing a lot, and so you're all welcome. So October 22nd or January 25th at 12 o'clock. And there are newer events. We've got in Borough, in October, we have the October Plenty. This was created slightly, I should come out and say that this was created in my living room in about 1992 with Friends of the Globe, the Lions Part, in a great discussion about what they might do to create a new event. So they created a May Day ceremony, which no longer happens. They created the 12th night celebrations, and also this one in October Plenty, where they have this wonderful, I suppose you call it a corn queen, made up of vegetation and vegetables, and they're all distributed to everybody at the end of the day. I was unfortunate to finish up with 12 pounds of Brussels sprouts one year. The last Thursday in October, which of course is very close to Halloween, in the villages of Hinton... Right. One that went missing. Hinton St George and Lopin in Somerset, they process their punkies around the village. They're made from mangel wurzel, not pumpkins, so they're much harder to cut. But there's intricate flower shapes, animal patterns, and there is a competition, judging. There's also a punky king and a punky queen are crowned, and prizes are given for the best design. And they go through the village shouting, "It's punky night tonight, punky night tonight. Give us a candle, give us a light, it's punky night tonight." And collecting, it's kind of localized Halloween trick-or-treat without the tricks. Are they gone? Oh, they've gone. Yeah, Halloween, proper Halloween in Cheshire, yes. We have the wonderful spectacle of the Antrobus soul cakers, so soul caking teams going on their rounds. They start off on Halloween and then every weekend following until they've frequented all the pubs. But this, I can play the clip.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Raise a fire and strike a light. For in this house tonight, there's going to be a dreadful fight between King George and Black Prince. And I hope King George will win.
In come I, King George. I want £10,000 in gold. Without it fought the fiery dragon and brought it to a slaughter. And by these deeds won the King of Egypt's daughter.
So like most folk dramas, there's a challenge. There's a fight and then a killing of one of the participants. And then in comes the quack doctor.
I am the best quack doctor you can bet. I might travel.
There's also a supernumerary who steals a spectator's pints. This is Beelzebub.
Oh, in comes I, Beelzebub. Hold me shoulder, I carries me clog. And I me on me dripping pan. And I makes myself a jolly old man. With a rin-tin tin and a bottle of gin, I'll sup a pint pot down with any old man. If you don't believe me, try me.
I mean, this is quite a challenge for any thespian because there's sometimes up to 8 performances a night.
If you don't believe these words I say, step in, Wilder. Go away. Stand still.
Now, this is the most wonderful spectacle. This is Dick, the wild horse, and his driver.
Wait, stand still. Whoa, now what have you done? Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
In comes Dick and all his men. Why, we've come to see you once again. Once he was alive, but now he's dead. Nothing left but a poor old horse's head. Every tooth in his mouth sounds rink, jink and jank like a regiment of pickled onions. And I tell you what, if you look down his mouth, you can see holes in his socks. Wait, now stand still. He's won the Derby and the Oaks and finished up holding an old mill float. But that's not all this horse's career. My God, no.
Hey, we'll fry them up, whoa.
And a defecating horse as well.
And just before he was found, they shot its mother to save it being drowned. He was fed night and day with a spoon, and at one time could dance to any tune. That'll do, that'll do. But now you see he has but one leg. With that leg, he's forced to beg. That'll do, that'll do. All he begs, it is but small, but that's obliged to serve us all. Ask these chaps out here, they're bigger liars than me.
I'm not so much.
So stand up, Dick, and show yourself. Whoa, now stand still. And
Now our play is ended and we can no longer stay.
I'll shut that short. Actually, can the stage lights go off, do you think? Because I've noticed that a lot of the definition's missing on the... Oh, that's better, I think. Great. There's some drama coming up shortly. Can somebody give me a time check? I've not... 10:38. How long have I got, folks? 10, 15 minutes. 15 minutes, brilliant. Yeah, the other thing more noticeable in Yorkshire especially, there's Mischief Night on the 4th. I mean, in Devon and Cornwall we had Mischief Night on May Eve, but here in Yorkshire you actually get these notices up all over, warning people to take anything in that's movable, you know, to take your gate posts off if they're liftable and so on. It's quite serious. And in this case, you know, this was 2 years ago. And I'm not going to touch on Halloween because we haven't got all day, of course. But Sheffield had Caking Neat, which was a kind of, again, treating without the treats. Go around Dunworth and Stannington. This was taken over in more recent times by adult celebrations centred in the pubs. It's quite interesting. You get a normal pub up to about 9 o'clock at night, everyone sitting around drinking, and suddenly there's this attack of incontinence, and everyone, man and woman, rushes to their equivalent toilets with carrier bags, and they all reappear in costume, in disguise, and sit in different seats. And then the landlord has to judge the best or the worst costume, and prizes are given out. And for some reason, I've lost all the slides of that, which is a shame, but I hope my description is... and again, regional variations are many, but I think nowadays they seem to be controlled, mediated and appropriated by media and commerce. So Halloween, we can't miss it, you know, it's there. And thanks to Tesco's and Sainsbury's and Pound Shop, you know, we've got all these fantastic costumes now, which we didn't have before. But, again, it's not connected. We have Turning the Devil's Boulder on the night of 5th of November. And the folk of Shebbear in North Devon, they ensure the village will be free from evil for the coming year by this ancient custom of turning the devil's boulder.
The king will neck away for another year.
So this is a huge stone lying by the ancient oak, very close to the church. So it's usually the church people that do it. And as they progress, they turn the devil's boulder over. And it's believed that unless this is done, Shebbear will be visited by misfortune. And in fact, in 1939, the outbreak of the Second World War, they didn't do it at November the 5th. And they got really anxious. So about a month or so later, they came out and did it. And they reckon that's why we won the war. Oh, and the devil didn't visit, of course. It's the usual story of the devil carrying this stone and interrupted by St. Michael in this case, and he dropped the boulder as he was carrying it from heaven to hell. I love that last piece there. The man says, "Let 'em bide," as if anyone's going to move it anymore. Again, closer to home, the Lord Mayor's show in London usually precedes Armistice Day. I always think it's a huge affair showing commerce and so on, and sadly with a very large military display, which seems to have sort of interrupt this idea of armistice and remembrance, which takes place all over. And we move on to the 11th of November, which again is Armistice Day itself. And in Fenny Stratford, near Bletchley, they have another kind of remembrance. It's to remember a man called Dr. Brown Willis, who was a local benefactor and a church patron. And they do this by firing cannons. And I will skip through this, if I may. So these are 6 metal cannons that they charge with gunpowder. I'll let it run for a bit. So it's charged with gunpowder and then lit with a long metal rod that's been heated in the fire. Sorry?
Yeah, well, I think I've got another bit of business. All these poppers are individual, no numbers on the bottom. right, so you,
Yes.
oh,
You know
I
where you want
see,
them?
yes, you
That's
said
it.
that was
Yeah,
like
we do one at a time. You see,
Oh, Green Chicken Man, the way he went on.
oh dear, oh dear.
It was.
Again, if you read the history books and all the rest of it, they tell you the things would actually take up to 1/4 pound of gunpowder. But I've actually measured out 1/4 pound of gunpowder and tried it with him. Yeah. Well, no.
This is done at 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. It used to be done outside the local church, which, you know, where Brown Willis had actually put his fortune.
Yes,
but in,
true.
I think, 1950 some odd, one of the cannons went off and the church
you can
clock
see.
fell off. So they've moved appropriately to a field just beyond the local graveyard. Anyway, you get the idea. Earlier that morning, there's a more quieter, I mean, it's actually before sunrise, in a field between Rugby and Coventry. There is it sounds like an old folk song, there's a field with a mound, and on that mound there is a stone. And this is you can see it at the bottom there, this is the Roth Silver stone. And villagers from 25 parishes meet there before sunrise to put their rent for the year into the stone. Money goes to the Duke of Buccleuch, who doesn't need it, and the rent hasn't changed in 1,000 years, so he actually receives the sum of around 47 pence. And then we all go off and have breakfast and drink rum and so on. How are we doing? 10 minutes? Okay, well, I'll keep going. You have to just pull the plug. I think we're all right. The many towns in Sussex have bonfire. We all know about November the 5th. It's probably the one thing that everyone knows about sort of tradition. In Sussex, there are bonfire societies, and since the early 19th century, the celebration's been organised throughout. And in Lewes, on the 5th of November, a lot of the bonfire societies from Sussex all come together for a grand parade. And there's costumes, there's blazing tar trucks, there's band playing processions. It's fantastic. The smell of paraffin is wonderful. And all the societies join the grand parade, and then the local people go back to their own sites for bonfires, fireworks displays, and effigy burning, which you'll see any second. Cliff Bonfire Society, probably the most notorious, because they still carry the No Popery banners. And this is to remember the 17 Protestant martyrs that were burnt at stake in 1550 in the Marian persecutions. So this backlash to Queen Mary's Lane. And I say they're the real hardliners. They carry on this, and there's lots of criticism, of course. So the blazing torch is representing, somebody recently said this is, Ku Klux Klan in Sussex. It's not, it's 17 torches to commemorate those dead Protestants. And they do that at the War Memorial, where the dead of the Second and First World War are also remembered. But they also there, as you see, they not only have Guy Fawkes, but they have a Pope. And that's the controversy. They comment quite regularly on political and social history of the day. So the effigies have been of unpopular figures: Napoleon, Hitler, Thatcher, Bin Laden, Cameron, Boris, in fact, as you'll see. This was a skit on devolution. These are about 20 foot high, and there's about 2,000 pounds of gunpowder inside. That's why you won't see any blazing torches alongside, or anyone smoking a cigarette are leapt upon immediately. That was a very popular, or unpopular, whichever you way, of Maggie Thatcher many years ago. And that was right, here we go. I'll just... Cameron Clegg. Ah, Boris. More Boris. Oh, yes, Piggate, yes. And I've no idea who that man is. And Theresa May. Oh, and back to Boris. But anyway, that's the important thing is that
The 11th of September.
remember.
Our country has had to deal with terrorist dictators such as Guy Fawkes, Napoleon, the Kaiser, Adolf Hitler. Terrorists of both sides. And now, Osama bin Laden. With others like Saddam Hussein and Milosevic, the cliff have always dealt with them so perfectly well. So stand up, take note of the cliff, and recite the bonfire prayers.
Bonfire
Taking
prayer.
your time from me. Remember, remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot, plot, plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Plot, plot. Skyfall, in his intent to blow up the king and the parliament. 3 score barrels of powder below, pour rolling to overthrow.
With a dancing and burning match. Holla boys, ring boys, ring. Holla boys, God save the king.
And there's more, but I will plod on. At one point, the mock clergy go up onto a bonfire site, and the people watching just fire rockets and all sorts of things at them, so they now wear ear protectors, welders' trousers, eye goggles, the lot. All right. So not only do they burn the Pope, they blow up the effigies. Oh, right. Am I being yanked off with a fork? No. Right, quickly. More bangs down in my native Devon. Right, 2 minutes. Ottery St Mary, where the most extraordinary, these things are all challenged by this contemporary ogre of health and safety executive now, no more than Ottery. You are warned that you're there at your own risk, because there's blazing tar barrels. These are lit in the evening, first of all for the children at 4:30. They do warn the children at school not to play with matches, but tar barrels are something else. So these are the children's barrels, and as the day goes on, the barrels get larger, as do the participants.
Okay, James.
Give you a quick sense of what goes on.
Anthony's right behind him, Luke.
There's 18 barrels in all. They used to be sponsored by the local pubs, and the pubs have got fewer, but they still continue to run outside the pubs site. Anyway, that's the tame version. That's the children. Then they say they get larger and larger and larger, and sweatier and sweatier. Oh, there's a woman's barrel at 9 o'clock. That's a more recent concession. And they literally run until the barrels burn off their backs, and still not concluding. So I very rushed through there. I apologise, but I'll just finish off with a shot of me after running with the barrels one year. And I had a wash there. Right. All right, thanks for your perseverance. Oh, yeah, all right, sorry about it. I didn't have the time going on there.
Oh, that's fine. So, we're not going to do questions. If everyone's got one really quick question for Doc, wave quickly and shout out.
What about the mommy name?
Yes, absolutely. They appear all through the year.
Thank you for your contribution. So, sorry, I'll be calm ever so slightly in a moment. So thanks again, Doc. You're around for a little while?
Oh, yeah.
So any other questions, do please ask him. He's an absolute font of all things folky and spooky and explodey, which I didn't know before. We'll be back in about 10 minutes with Christopher Hadley and Dr. Victoria Carr. So we're going to take a short break. Books are available at the back. We have T-shirts outside. The Folklore Society has a book they'd like to give you if you haven't already got it. We'll see you again in 10 minutes. Thank you.